everyone, to another edition of the Fragomen FC podcast. We're coming to you in the fall. That's not to say that a lot didn't happen over the summer, soccer-wise and otherwise. Jake, Sergio, welcome back. Good to see you guys again. Jake, how was your summer?
Summer was great. It went by very quickly. There was a lot of action, a lot of matches to watch, a couple of big tournaments that we're going to cover here in the next few minutes. So it was really good. How about yours, Rick?
It was all right. I know we're going to cover this in a little bit, but exactly like you said, a lot of sports on, a lot of soccer on. Some good, some not so good, but definitely eventful and a very full slate considering the summer's usually downtime in the international soccer world. Sergio, how was yours?
Oh, it was just great. Very nice having you again, being with you, Rick and Jake, the three amigos back together. And yes, as you stated, was full of, emotions, adventures, change of formats in some competitions. And, of course, the Copa America. This was the 48th edition of this Copa America. It's the second time the U.S. was hosting this tournament. 16 teams from two confederations. It was co-organized by CONMEBOL and CONCACAF. So it was just a super event. There were 70 goals scored. That means around 2 per match, Lautaro being the top scorer and winning the Golden Boot. So this tournament was a memorable one for all kinds of reasons, not only the performances of the teams, but also, the pitches, the heat, the ticket pricing. The tournament ended with the Argentina versus Colombia game that where the security breaches drove a lot of fans without tickets inside the Hard Rock Stadium. So it was such full of great moments. A couple of the greatest moments, at least for me, I don't know if you guys coincide. It was the quarterfinal of Argentina versus Ecuador, where Argentina was winning, but on the last minute, Ecuador scores a goal, and the whole stadium just went completely silent. They went to the penalty kick-off. Messi even missed his kick. At the end, Argentina won, but it was just a great game. And another just awesome moment about the tournament is just to see James Rodriguez rose again from the ashes. He was going like downhill from the last time we saw him in Real Madrid. He has been going to a lot of different teams. He was not even sold. He transferred free. But right now on this tournament, he had like the top assist with 6, and he was named the best player of the tournament. So it was just very nice to see him now again. Also, Canada and Panama just exceeding expectations as the best CONCACAF performance. We thought like the U.S., Jake and me with Mexico, we'd go a little bit farther, but it turns out we didn't. So there were a couple of surprises regarding this. I was also astounded by the marketing. I saw a lot of marketing with big brands just bringing Messi and all of this, but I saw little marketing from the CONCACAF and from the CONMEBOL. I think that's a little thing to tune up for future tournaments. But, there's always room of improvement. And talking about Canada, Marsh, such a great coach. How long was he with Canada before the tournament? A month, perhaps? And he got even better results than the U.S. and Mexico. So this leaves a bitter taste for the other co-host countries, the U.S. and Mexico, on the road to the World Cup, which is just a couple of years ahead. So what can we expect now? The challenges faced at this tournament should be taken into consideration, so we can make the World Cup better, or the FIFA can make the World Cup better, and a better experience for everyone, not only the general public, but also the players and the teams and the staff, everyone involved. For example, with the heat was extreme. So there was a lot of people just standing down in line, which had not a great time just being there. So how can this be fixed? Perhaps moving the time of the games a little later, or perhaps, putting some kind of area with shade so this doesn't happen again. Also, the ticket pricing, this was very, very criticized. And although this seems unlikely to change for the World Cup, it might be a good point for the FIFA to consider. Also, the pitch and field conditions. As you know, there was a lot of critique regarding the bumps on the pitches. The grass was not even. And I know FIFA is a different host from CONMEBOL and CONCACAF, so they will most surely take this into consideration and just make it happen. But it's a very big point just to take into consideration. And finally, what comes for Canada, I think you're doing great. It was good football. You went to the semifinals. just incredible from one coach that applied for the U.S. team for the U.S. team and didn't get the position to come to Canada and go to the semifinals. It was just like a great hit for the U.S. and they went and hired Pochettino or Pochettino, however you like to pronounce it. So he's a very seasoned coach. It will be very interesting to see because he's one of the top coaches in the world, but his expertise, like with Tottenham, as you know, he flew them to the final of the Champions League, which was a great achievement, but he does not have such experience with national teams. So it will be very interesting to see how that develops. And on the Mexico side, bring it up a coach like Javier Aguirre, who has a lot of experience with the Mexican team and knows every and each one of the players. It's also good to see how it will pan out. Also being a mentor for Rafa Marquez coming from the second team of Barcelona and to take up the leadership of the Mexican team eventually downside the line. So it was just a lot of emotions and a lot of things to consider. But I digress. How was your summer and how's everything, Jake?
Well, that was a lot to take in. I know
know.
that Rick definitely wants to talk about Canada here because they were definitely the surprise of the tournament.
They
And a
were.
good surprise. They were a feel-good story. I mean, like you said, Jesse Marsch, he interviews for the U.S. job. They decide not to hire him. They go back to Berhalter, who then gets sacked after the tournament. I mean, it was a horrible tournament for the U.S. Some of those issues with the field condition, the infrastructure in the United States is built for football, American football stadiums. So it makes it difficult to have a full-size pitch, or when you do have, for instance, corners were a huge issue, just not enough space for players to line up to take corners. Rick, I'll let you get into Canada because I know you want to talk about that as well as maybe the Euros.
Yeah, thanks, Jake, and thanks, Sergio. I think Canada, exceeded expectations. It was really exciting for us here, like you mentioned, Sergio. Jesse Marsch has just joined the team following the resignation of their previous coach, John Hardman. And so we weren't really sure what to expect. Obviously, playing Argentina in your first game is pretty tough, but the team rebounded really quick, winning one, tying one, advancing, beating Venezuela in a shootout, a really exciting game. We went toe to toe with them to make the semifinals, where ultimately we lost Argentina. And frankly, I think we were on the night the much better team against Uruguay in the third place game, where we were up until an extra time equalizer, and then losing unfortunately in a shootout for that third place game. But things do look really bright this side of the border. We have an exhibition game against Panama coming up at BMO Field. Canada hasn't played a home game in over a year. So all these games they've played, and even in the lead up to that Copa America, they were able to play France and Holland. So we're getting a lot more, I think, premier competition, which is what this country really needs and what we lacked over the years. And I think advancing to that last World Cup has really put Canada on the map. This is essentially our golden generation, and it leads into 2026. So the timing can be better. And let's see what happens. I think the Copa America was a great training ground for this team to come together, play all their games close to home, but essentially all road games. I think it's fair to say that they were outnumbered in every one of those games in terms of the fans in the stands, the fans that, whether they were there with tickets or without, definitely outnumbered the Canadians. But a lot of people watching. In fact, the TV numbers were outstanding here in Canada for a lot of these games because they were aired in prime time. Speaking of the Euros, we can't forget our neighbors across the pond. Another tournament won by Spain, their fourth Euro. Another tournament lost by England in the final, their second consecutive Euro, where they came close but just couldn't get it done. They remain on one major tournament, their 1966 World Cup that they hosted and beat Germany. An interesting tournament. First tournament at the Euro where they had 32 teams, hosted by one country. They went back to that model, whereas the last tournament, it was hosted by a number of different countries. Germany is always a great host, very organized. You had a bunch of different storylines. Not the introduction, but the reintroduction of the Scottish national team and that fan base, which brings a lot of life to whatever city they play in. You had Georgia's first tournament. You had the introduction of Yamal, of Goulier, a lot. You had a lot of young up and coming players, and I think if they could do it again. I think players like Mbappe, Lukaku, even a Harry Kane might want that tournament back. I think they disappointed, unfortunately, and didn't shine as people thought they may have. But overall, a great tournament hosted by Germany, 32 teams, and that will continue into 2028. So, Jake, I'll pass it to you. I know perhaps the biggest, maybe not soccer tournament, the biggest sporting event of all also happened this summer.
Yes, thanks, Rick. So yeah, there was another huge sporting event this summer, and that is the Olympics, 2024 Summer Olympics that were hosted by France. And what a start to the Olympics, from the opening ceremony all the way to the closing ceremony, with Tom Cruise coming down from buildings, running the torch to LA, where it's going to be in 2028. But let's focus on soccer, because that's what this podcast is really about. So we'll talk about men's soccer and women's soccer, because both are played in the Olympics here. So the men's tournament, it's usually consisting of not the full national team. It's an under 23 team. There's a couple of overage players that are allowed. There's those slots that are made available. What you had this year was a really competitive gold medal match between Spain and France. Spain did come up on top, so they won not only the Euro, but the Olympics. France, being the host, comes in with that silver. I know that was disappointing for the French people, but again, a really good young team and a really good senior team. And then third, and maybe a surprise to everyone out there, coming in with the bronze medal was Morocco, who just had a fantastic tournament. Some of the top performers were Rahimi, Fermin Lopez from Spain, and Mateta from France. Just all played very well, all led for the number of goals. The women's tournament was exciting, especially for us here in the United States, because the U.S. won gold again. It's their fifth gold and the first time since 2012. So that's really exciting. Silver was won by Brazil, and then the bronze was won by Germany. A couple of standouts, for the U.S. team, you had Trinity Rodman, who is the daughter of NBA legend Dennis Rodman. She's just playing out of her mind. And then another really exciting thing to watch here was Marta, who's a legend in Brazil, her last international match with the Brazilian team. Unfortunately, she didn't come away with the gold, but a silver in the Olympics is nothing to be ashamed of.
And I guess that dovetails very nicely with today's episode, where we have a colleague of ours, Geraldine from France, who can speak to, I guess, our firm's involvement with the Olympics and how we helped clients and other organizations with mobility issues leading up to and during the Paris Games. So with that, here we go.
Welcome back. We're thrilled to welcome Géraldine Renaudière, a senior manager at Fragomen's Paris office. Géraldine was Fragomen's lead contact in France for the 2024 Summer Olympics. Géraldine, it's so great to have you as a guest. Right off the bat, tell us how the Olympics were and if you made it to any of the events.
Well, thank you guys. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you again for having me. So, first of all, to be perfectly honest, I was among the many Parisians who actually fled the city during a part of the summer. So, it's a shame, I know. But in my defense, there was a quite anxious atmosphere around the games at the time. We expected overcrowded streets, movement restrictions that reminded us a bit of COVID. So we really wanted to avoid that. However, I watched the opening ceremony, some competitions on TV, and it was absolutely stunning. I also attended some Paralympic events early September in Paris, like the wheelchair basketball, for instance, and it was really, really impressive. So overall, these summer games were a big success with all eyes on France. And the least we can say is that there were iconic sporting achievements and highlights for many delegations, the US delegation, of course, the French delegation, and without mentioning, the 5 swimming events that took place in the Seine River and not in a stadium. So that was unique.
So now that the Olympics are behind us, based on your experience, how would you assess the success of France's immigration policies? So, in particular, facilitating the arrival of athletes, staff, fans. It's a massive undertaking. Were there any unexpected challenges that arose during or even before the games?
Yes, so I would say that the biggest challenge from an immigration point of view was mostly ahead of the games, compared to other major sporting events. The public announcements regarding travel rules and entry requirements were a bit late and sporadic. To give you an example, 6 months before the games, a streamlined visa application process called the Olympic Consulate was introduced, but only for athletes, staff members, and official guests. While on the other hand, visitors, workers, investors, family members have found, limited, clear and targeted information about the visa types, the work permit adjustments, or the time frames in this context. So for that reason, Fragomen got involved very, very early, connected with national and local immigration authorities to get the most accurate and reliable information. But yeah, legally speaking, there were no particular change or flexibilities for the business community. So what we wanted to do at the time was really to anticipate, the possible challenges, the delays, even the stricter labor controls. So we strongly advocated for anticipation and early planning strategy.
That's very interesting, Geraldine. Thank you very much. And with France showing a tremendous, number, thousands and thousands of people, athletes, and staff from all over the world entering France, France implemented several technological advancements, to streamline the immigration processes in 2024. How did these innovations perform in practice? Are they likely to become permanent fixtures in the French immigration system moving forward, or is any specific about this?
So yeah, as mentioned, this Olympic consulate was quite unique, as it instituted a separate visa application process for those belonging to the so-called Olympic family. It was free of charge, it was faster and largely remote. So basically, athletes and national delegations, those who are subject to the Schengen visa requirements, could apply with accreditation letter and keep their travel document and passport with them throughout the process instead of submitting them to the authorities. So basically, with these visa numbers integrated into the accreditation cards, the athletes and staff were allowed to move freely within the Schengen area for maximum of 90 days. And this system was a sort of prototype of the future Schengen digital visa, but it was only temporary. It was instituted for no more than 70,000 beneficiaries, all of them accredited for the Olympics, subject to background security check. And it is not expected to become permanent until all the Schengen member states implement the new EU visa platform that should start operating in 2028.
Okay.
So piggybacking on Sergio's question and your response, so I guess you spoke to some of the technological advances that France introduced. Were there any notable improvements or breakdowns in handling the surge of visa applications, like border crossings? Are there any concerns that France has, now that the Olympics and Paralympics are over, that people are overstaying visas? Do they have any mechanism to track these people? Things like that.
Well, yes, in any case, it was a big influx of people in a short period of time. That is for sure. We had more than 300,000 people attending the opening ceremony, about 1 million international tourists coming mainly from the United States, Brazil, Japan, the UK. To give you also an idea, 100,000 people landed in Paris airports during the few days before the opening ceremony. So, to manage these border crossings, France deployed additional border guards in the airports, and we also had the support of an EU agency, which is called Frontex, that supported the national security measures with around 200 officers to perform first line checks on travelers, for instance. There were also some partnerships with other countries. And stricter controls also in the territory to secure the infrastructure and the competition venues. Regarding the tracking and overstays, it's hard to measure actually the volumes of those who overstayed after the games, especially because, as you may know, the European border management systems that aims to register the entries and exits of the Schengen area are not operational yet. But it's the first time in any case, it's not the first time in any case that it happens during these large scale competition that some athletes, for instance, are either reported missing after the game, especially from African countries. For instance, we have a few of them. And others also took this opportunity, but it's very limited number, to claim asylum in Europe, for instance, to flee conflicts or persecution on this occasion.
So I know we've talked about some of the technology that France has used immigration wise. We've talked about athletes, and we've also talked about tourists and visitors. Um, Now that the games are over, what's really the long term impact on tourism in France, and how has the immigration system adapted to manage the post Olympic flow of visitors? Have the games really left a lasting legacy in terms of French immigration policy for tourists?
That's a very that's a very good question. Again, it's a bit early to predict any long-term impact on economy or tourism in France. The games are expected to generate a revenue of $10 billion for the Paris region over several years. But in any case, we can see that opinion surveys show a very positive perception worldwide. The games proved well efficient, organized, safe for a lot of people. So there is no doubt that it will actually attract more visitors and tourists for the years to come. But as you know, France and Paris are already, a very famous destinations. It's also one of the top destinations for Schengen visa applications. And it's funny to see that foreigner visitors expected chaos, and at the end, everything was quite smooth, including in the public transport and even the friendliness of Parisians. Well, those who did not flee the, the city at the time, but it was interesting to see that and to mention that.
Oh, that's so great, Geraldine. That's so great. So, that pilot program that you told us just a few minutes ago, it sounds amazing. Are there any other key takeaways from this Olympics of Paris 2024 that could influence the way on France handling immigration down the line? And do you think any of these practices or policies can be taken into consideration by, the North America co-hosts, in order to implement it on the World Cup that it's only 2 years far down the line?
Well, among the lessons to be learned, I would say that it's very important to have reliable and timely information. It's really key for participants, visitors, but also those who plan to travel and relocate in the country. They should all be well aware of the rules, immigration, labor requirements to make sure they are fully compliant when they arrive. And for the future events, I would say that digital and centralized process should be more systematically implemented to deal with high volumes of visa applications. This is, I think, even more true for large-scale events like the World Cup in 2026, that involves several countries and requires smooth coordinations among the partners.
Well, that's great. I think it's really important, some of these takeaways, especially since LA is hosting the 2028 Olympics, and some of the lessons learned from one massive city to another, global destination. Typically, what we do, Geraldine, and again, I don't think I'll be surprised with the response. However, what we do with our guests on our podcast series is I will show this lovely World Cup trophy. This is what all of the teams will be playing for. 48 teams, by the way, in 2026, the largest World Cup ever. And we'd like to ask our guests who they think will be taking home this lovely trophy. So tell everyone, your opinion. which may be the most predictable answer we get today, but I will let you share your
It could be
response.
Well, I'm
Canada, Rick.
sorry.
It could be Canada.
Sure.
I won't surprise you, unfortunately. Yeah, as you remember, France was that close to winning the 2022 World Cup. And then France got revenge on Argentina during the Olympic semifinals. So now I must say, that the rivalry continue with Argentina, but also with other co-favorites nations. So there is absolutely no doubt that France will win this time again. But yeah, the French team is strong, and talented. So I think, I'm not the only one to think that way. It's not only my opinion. But yeah, what about you? Actually, any predictions? Is it
Oh,
is it
she's putting.
also?
This is the first guest to put it back on us.
I give you the
Um,
same question.
I could, with the flag in the background, I could say Canada as one of the co-hosts. I do think that a European country is going to win. Um, I think Spain is looking very strong. They have a lot of up and coming players. France
Yeah,
as well would be in that mix. England's always sort of there, but not really there. One of these times they might break through with their generation of young players, Bellingham and others. But I think I would probably stick with the current Euro champions and Olympic champions, and I'd have to say Spain. If I had to say right now, 2 years out, I'd say Spain.
Spain just has another golden generation here. I mean, the young talent there is phenomenal. They
true.
are stacked.
Sure.
It'd be great to see a North American team win it. Given the way things are going right now, I don't think that's going to happen.
I think we're relying on
Um,
us here, Jake. I
We
think
can
I think
always
we're relying.
dream, Jay. We can always dream, but I don't think that we will do. But yes, I totally coincide with you guys. Like Spain, it's very strong right now. I think Argentina moment has passed. They won everything right now, and France, Geraldine, of course, they have such talented players. Not only Mbappe, they are the backbone of Real Madrid, who I support. Camavinga, like everyone. They have such great players, but I think it will be tough against Spain. But we will see.
We'll see.
Thank you so much, Geraldine, for your time, for your
Thank you.
insight. It's very valuable for us and our viewers. And for our viewers, please stay tuned. We will be coming back to you again before the year is out. But again, Geraldine, thank you so much. I hope you have a great day. And to our viewers and listeners, we'll be seeing you very soon. Thanks very much.
That was
Thank you
great.
so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you all.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.